Hello guys, and welcome to Unit 5 of iGCSE Computer Science. Today we are going to look at the Internet and the World Wide Web, focusing on the main differences between them and of course some of the key terminology that comes with this topic. This is lesson 1 of a series of 5 lessons starting with the differences between the Internet and the World Wide Web. We are currently here in the syllabus in Unit 5, and the topics that we will look at today: understand the difference between the Internet and the World Wide Web. These are two separate entities, okay? They are two separate things that we need to understand the difference between. We're going to look at this term, Uniform Resource Locator, otherwise known as a URL. And we're also going to look at these terms HTTP and HTTPS, okay, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and then the same but with secure. And then at the end, we will look at the purpose and functions of a web browser, which are fairly simple, and you've all used them, so you should know what a web browser is, but we just need to know what it does in particular. So first and foremost, Internet and the web. People often think that they are the same thing. They are very similar, but there is a very specific difference that we need to know. If we look at the Internet, firstly, what we're looking at here is basically the hardware, okay? I've highlighted hardware there. The actual infrastructure of the Internet, so telecommunications towers, fibre optic cables under the sea, the copper cables that you see in the street, on telegraph poles. All these things are what essentially is the Internet, which allows us to connect with other people around the world. So this term hardware is what we kind of think of the Internet is. And it's just one massive network, which we know as the Internet, which gives everybody the ability to communicate and share resources, go on websites, all the things that we do on the Internet. So with that in mind, the World Wide Web is everything that we do whilst we are on the Internet. Everything that we use and look at and see whilst we are connected to the Internet would be classed as the World Wide Web. World Wide Web, obviously shortened as www, which you will probably recognize www dot, and any website that you've been on in your lifetime is a website, okay? So that is something that you've accessed via the Internet. We can think of it as the software. We can think of it as web browsers, as going on YouTube. Anything that you do on the Internet would be classed as accessing the World Wide Web. Watching videos, looking at just general information or text would be classed as the World Wide Web. So just a quick summary. Definitions are on the left. Internet, the global network of computers, and then the World Wide Web are the web pages that you can see on the Internet. The Internet's purpose is to allow people to communicate and to share data, and then the World Wide Web allows you to access that information through the use of websites or web servers. The Internet, the hardware, routers, cables, switches, the cables in the streets, the cables under the sea, this is what the Internet is made of. Whereas the World Wide Web is things like web browsers, web servers, web pages, okay, all of the software that we've just mentioned. Usage generally the same, okay, we do tend to use the Internet to access the web. This row kind of goes hand in hand. Content format, so packets that we've discussed in Unit 2 is how information gets around the Internet, whereas the World Wide Web is what we actually see, okay? So we can think of this as the binary numbers that are flying around the wires and the cables, whereas this one is the actual information that we see. Is it text? Is it an image? Is it a video? Is it audio? Okay, all these things that we see is what we use the World Wide Web for. Then we come to this term, Uniform Resource Locator, okay, shortened down to URL, which you might have heard of before. A URL is technically just the fancy name for a web address. A web address or a website that you type in can be broken down into these different portions. First one is the protocol, which is generally HTTPS. 99% of the time you will see this when you go on the website. Okay, we will discuss this in detail as we move forward, especially the S in particular, but as you know, most websites will start with this. Now, this is just a protocol which the web browser confirms that it's accessing a website using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Your computer and the website that you're accessing can then communicate. This middle part, the domain name, the website in general, okay, whether it's Amazon.com, whatever the website might be, it will be classed as the domain name. So generally the company or the organization that you're going on would be classed as the domain name. The structure afterwards will be a specific page. Okay, for example, Amazon must have millions of pages on their website for all of their different products, all of their services, but at any one point, whatever page you're on will be highlighted at the end of the URL. So this is generally named whatever it might be, whether it's a help page, it would say help at the end, or a contact us page, or products page. Whatever the page is in particular is displayed at the end after the / there. Let's look at the HTTP and HTTPS protocols. These are protocols in which the computers need to agree when they talk. If the two computers that are communicating over the internet didn't agree on the same rules for communicating, then it would be very messy. Okay, so as long as they agree on the same principles, that's what a protocol is. Okay, a protocol is just a set of rules. So when they agree on the same rules, they are then able to communicate. Now, HTTP was the first one. It is unencrypted, so it's generally not safe, especially if you're sending personal information. It was the first one that was developed out of the two, and it doesn't involve encryption. Encryption is something else that we've discussed in Unit 2. But when we use HTTP, as you can see, it's red, it's got a big red cross on it. It's generally not that safe, especially if you're sending personal information. Now, this could be just simply putting your email address in, or if you're buying products using a credit card, you certainly wouldn't put your details in a page that had HTTP. Okay, you would definitely want HTTPS, okay, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. So this is obviously the more secure one, as it uses encryption, okay, to format any data that you send will be encrypted. So if it is intercepted by a hacker, it will be unreadable. Encrypted means that if it's hacked, you can't read it unless you've got the key, which again, we've discussed in Unit 2. So that's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS, okay, very important topic. And then this is not to be confused with this next term, HTML. HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, is the fundamentals behind any web page. So it's not a set of rules, it's not anything to do with communication, it's just how the website or a website is built. You can think of it as a programming language, although you wouldn't really class it as programming as such, but behind a website lives all of this code. As you can see here, all of this syntax, which is what the structure of a HTML page looks like. Now, we see websites as, nicely laid out, titles, images, bodies of text. This is for us as humans, okay? Obviously, a computer has to do something in the background. Now, HTML is just a language. It's like we've said, hypertext markup language. When the web browser receives a HTML page, it reads all of this information in these lines here highlighted, and it will display it in a format that we can see, that we can read, that we can understand. Anyone who's interested in web development will certainly know what HTML is. So here's what happens when you open a web browser. So Chrome, Firefox, Safari. When you access a web page, this is what happens in particular. Okay, now this is a common question in the exam. Okay, it could be a 4 or 5 mark question. First and foremost, we fetch the HTML page. Okay, when you type in a website, you are essentially saying, "Hello company, can you send me your web page?" Okay, in a HTML format. That company says yes, sends it down the internet, and your web browser receives it. The browser reads the HTML file, which has these special tags, which we've seen in the previous page. Okay, the tags look like this, which is the less than and more than sign. These tags will determine what is actually happening on the page. Whether it's, let's go back a page, whether it's the head or a title or a body, this will determine what format it looks like. Okay, so for example, title here will make the text in between be big and bold. Body will just separate it into its own little section on the page. H2, the headline or heading tag, okay, and that will make this text here look like a heading. But this is what's happening in the background. The web browser receives the HTML file and displays it on your page in a nice structured format. Which brings us to the next step, it builds the page. It takes that blueprint of the HTML file and puts it on your page in a format that we can read and understand. This thing called CSS, cascading style sheets, this is any styles that exist, okay? So you might have a certain color scheme, you might have a certain font scheme, but CSS is applied alongside HTML, okay? We don't have to go into too much detail for iGCSE, but CSS will just make it look nice and pretty and apply certain colors, fonts and even layouts. But the building blocks, the fundamentals are the HTML. Sometimes websites have interactivity in them, whether it's an interactive form that you can fill in. This is where JavaScript comes in. Something else that we don't need to pay particular interest to, but it's nice to know that it does exist, okay? And if you do continue computer science in the future, you will certainly know what JavaScript is and probably even use it. So things like buttons, interactive buttons. Sometimes you see websites where it will automatically tell if your password is safe, or if it needs to add a number or a symbol. That will be interactive in the form of JavaScript. Finally, the browser puts everything together and then shows you the page on your screen. Now, like we said, guys, this is the fundamental steps of what happens for HTML. And this could be a 4 or 5 mark question in the iGCSE exam. Other features that we know and use with browsers, all of these listed here. We'll go into detail for each one as we move forward, but you've probably used a web browser in your lifetime, okay? So knowing these things, it's just about being able to highlight them in an exam style question. The address bar, as you know, the address bar that lives here, you type in a web address, okay? Or as we now know, a URL. If you don't include the protocol, the browser will automatically put one in for you. And 99% of the time, it is this. Now, web browsers are pretty good, and they will tell you if it doesn't have the S, okay? And it'll come up with a big error message saying, this page isn't secure, would you like to still access it? Okay, so that is just another feature of a web browser. But the main thing is that it has an address bar, okay, and some kind of navigation. That you can go backwards on the page, you can go forwards, you can refresh the page, or even go back to your home page, which you can manually set. Again, the address bar is where you type your URL or your website. Bookmarks and favorites. As you've probably used again before, if you've used the web browser, you can set pages to be a favorite or a bookmark so that whenever you go back to your browser, you can easily access them just to the click of a button, that you don't have to type in the URL every single time. Okay, so you open Chrome, you'll click on this button here and Outlook automatically opens. Okay, you don't have to type in outlook.com. It just takes you to your favorite websites. Okay, super simple, super easy, along with your history. Okay, as you know, history will just be a track of everything that you've been on for as long as you've had that browser. It's recorded with the time and date it was accessed, and you can go as far back as, like I said, the browser has been in use, and you can delete the history, clear it, whatever you want to do. Okay, but it just keeps a track record of everything that you've been on with what time and date you went on it. You can have tabs, multiple web pages open in the same web browser, in the same window. You can flick between them. Before tabs, you had to have many separate browser windows, which was very messy. Okay, you'd have 10, 11, 12 windows open, and it would be very confusing as to which window you want to get back onto your website. Okay, but tabs keeps it nice and organized. You can give them color codes, you can rename them, so you can just stay nice and organized whilst you are browsing within a web browser. And then just to finish us off, we're going to write down the meanings of each of these acronyms and then list 5 features of a web browser. So first one, www, was World Wide Web, and this was the software, World Wide Web. This was everything that we do and see on the internet. A web browser, a website, okay, the World Wide Web is all the software that we access through the internet. URL, Uniform Resource Locator, okay, and this was just a fancy term for a website or web address. Obviously, we type in google.com and it will take us to that website, okay, so URL is just a term for that. HTTP and HTTPS are the protocols. Remember, the S stands for secure, Hypertext Transfer Protocol secure, and it's the protocol in which the devices, the computers, the laptops agree with the web servers on the protocol in which they will exchange information. And then HTML, which was the Hypertext Markup Language, which was the building blocks of any website. It contains tags, it contains scripts, and it's what your web browser will receive in the format of a HTML web page and builds it on your screen. 5 features of web browser, nice and simple. We've got things like favorites or bookmarks. We've got an address bar. We've got navigation. Backwards, we can go forwards, we can go to the home page and refresh the page. We've got search history. And finally, we have tabs. Okay, you can have multiple tabs open in one window. So guys, that was the difference between Internet and World Wide Web. We've looked at Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTML, URLs, and obviously the web browser and its features. So this is lesson 1 of 5 in Unit 5. Like I said, it does tie in with Unit 2 with a couple of topics, so please bear that in mind for any revision aspects. And then next lesson we will look at is DNS, okay, the domain name server. Okay, that's our next lesson. Okay guys, so I will see you next time.